Today I'm going to do a slightly different type of video talking about the realities of creating my own online course, the process, financial side, pros and cons, confessions, and general feelings during the journey. We're going to start with the process. Just a note, if you're unfamiliar with my course, it's called Pocket Japanese. It's a handmade Japanese course with structured lessons covering Japanese for beginners. I'm not Japanese, it's all from the perspective of a university student who really didn't like her university textbook's way of explaining things. If you're familiar with Japanese textbooks, take a guess which one. I want my course to be an illustrated Japanese guide that helps you learn Japanese through stories and characters. If you've not noticed from the textbook's corner, I like to draw. However, this takes ages when you're working on it all alone. Let's start at the beginning. Believe it or not, this didn't start as like a side hustle plan. During the pandemic, I was studying at university in Japan. I decided to return home to the UK when things were looking serious, as did most of my classmates. When I got home, it was obviously really hard to get a job. Very few places were hiring, and as I'd been out of the country to study, I couldn't apply for government aid. I eventually beat 50 people to get a job at a tiny store where I got to enjoy grown men throwing milk across the shop because I wasn't allowed to serve them unless they wore a mask. I did not make this rule, I had to follow this rule. This job was minimum wage, but I actually liked having no reason to leave the house. At the time, I was looking for more work, as this was about 25 hours a week, and I ended up applying to a tutoring job online and getting a I originally didn't want to use textbooks as it felt like cheating. I started making my own lessons in presentation form. This is where I'm about to do some mental gymnastics and come up with the idea of making a Japanese course that makes zero sense. I didn't want to have to send my students homework individually, so I thought, let's make a simple website and upload all the homework tasks and presentations there. That way, I don't have to take 1 minute sending the students homework and notes. I get to spend the next 2 years trying to build a website, the perfect Japanese study site. That will never be enough for me. I started uploading homework sheets and presentations made from Canva, pretty much all that was required of me, but then I was like, how about quizzes? And I found a third-party site that would let me add quizzes, so then we had quizzes. But I didn't like how they looked, and I also really wanted a feature where if you hovered over the Japanese character, it gave you the reading. This was a feature like I was so set on, so I looked at what I would need to add it, and it said code. So I was like, okay, sounds cool, let's pay for a business Squarespace. And I paid, and then I was paying to give my students homework while spending all my time on it rather than a 1 minute email. I'm now working at a friend's cafe for minimum wage plus coffee and lunch, so bonus, and tutoring on the side plus working on this website. This is slowed down 100 times by the fact that I don't know anything about web design and I do not have a single bit of talent for it. So the design changes every 5 minutes. This is still a problem, but it is getting better. I started literally from the bottom and there was no room to go down, basically. It was only up from there. The reason it slowed me down so much is my eye for web design slightly improved. I had to redo old lessons that were too hideous for me. I couldn't bear to look at them. This is something that continues to happen. However, I tried to stop myself from redoing old lessons, at least until I finished the base content I've already planned. Okay, good news, spring 2021, and our university tells us they're reopening to a few foreign students. I sign up, I'm excited to have a bit of spending money if I continue tutoring, and the day before I was supposed to go and get my visa, 2 weeks before the start of the term, we get an email saying the Japanese government has changed their mind and we won't be allowed back in. I read the email on my way to a massage therapy appointment booked that morning because my back was in so much pain, and I arrived at the clinic and cried, and luckily the lady had a daughter around my age and completely understood. We're going to get into the financial side of this soon, but let's look at a side quest. Apparently I wasn't suffering enough and I decided to go to South Korea and study Korean. This was a terrible idea mentally, as teaching students in the UK at 2 a.m. and then waking up at 7 a.m. to do 4 hours of fast-paced Korean was not it. Here's a secret, I'm really slow at learning languages. I'm generally average at school without trying too much, but the more effort a subject takes, the worse I am at it, which is probably the least ideal characteristic somebody who wants to study languages could possibly have ever. So I failed and I signed up for another term very spontaneously. This was genuinely a bad decision because I actually just didn't enjoy it and I should have loved it, but I was so tired trying to work on the site whilst trying to study and tutoring. The main reason for going to Korea is because Japan still wasn't letting us back in for university, so I was like, oh, let's try something different. However, silver lining, around this time, Squarespace releases their course feature that is an absolute game changer for me. It structured my course perfectly, something I was struggling with. However, I didn't see an option to make some lessons visible, so I made 2 courses, a free and a paid one. I know how to merge them, there is this feature, and I have to merge them, which takes 2 to 3 hours per chapter. And they also charge a 9% transaction fee. So, back to the main quest, coding. At some point, probably over 6 months into it, I decided the website needed coding. Problem, I've never coded in my life. The solution, I taught myself the world's most controversial teacher, ChatGPT. I say I taught myself, I'm barely scraping by, but things appear to be working. At some point around now, I get a student wanting to sit GCSE Japanese. That's like England's high school exam. I tell them I'm a tutor, not a teacher, but I technically know Japanese to that level and I can look at the syllabus and I was teaching Japanese. And then I get another student. I'm like, wow, okay, let's just make sure my lessons, which I've already made 60 of at this point, cover GCSE and N5. N5 is the official Japanese language test, first level. I go through the N5 kanji, word list, grammar, comparing them to the GCSE and crossing them all off on a massive spreadsheet, making sure every word in kanji is covered and all the grammar points in a way that makes reasonable sense. And obviously this is all to save 1 minute sending people homework or whatever this started as. Probably this takes 2 to 3 months after I accidentally delete my spreadsheet. Okay, I don't even know if I know the timeline of anything anymore because it all blurs into one big mess. Now that I have my ultimate spreadsheet, some of my old lessons don't match it. Actually, most don't. Goodbye, a year's worth of content, let's start fresh, and instead of presentations, put the lessons straight onto the website page. Honestly, at this point, I'm wishing I fell for one of those make 10k a month selling my course schemes because I'm like 2 years into this and paying for the website whilst not making any money on it and sometimes having the homework uploaded and ready for my students, but also sometimes not because I'm remaking old lessons to match my new spreadsheet. Okay, let's take our first look at the side. I know you're all interested in the finances and I'll either crush some of your dreams or give you hope. The website probably cost me £300 to maintain a year. I think in the first year it was either free or it was cheaper, it was like £100 a year. You might be able to find a cheaper website that does not have a custom URL. I currently sell the course at £25 for life. I want it to be affordable to all. I'm not a very big fan of the amount of websites that are kind of like £75 per year or something like that. I just not as interested in that. When I get to over 40 lessons released, it probably will go up a bit in price. So making this course was a lower risk move for me because even if I don't sell my course, once all my lesson content is uploaded to my website and all my homework is uploaded to my website someday, and all the quizzes I've made are uploaded to the website, I'll basically have very little work to do outside of my class time. What I'm saying is even if I don't sell the course, it makes my tutoring job easier. I probably work on this thing for 30 to 40 hours a week. I also tell myself I'm so lazy and hardly working and call myself the unemployed friend at the same time. They say like anyone can make an online course. I'm sure there is like an easier way to go about making one, but this has taken like a lot of time and money. For financial reasons, I'm in my late 20s and I still live with my parents. However, I would say I try to travel at least 6 months of the year, usually for education. It also makes sense for me not to find an apartment for 2 to 3 months at a time, as my parents probably know they'll be the ones helping me move in and out each and every time. I do think it's possible to make a course as detailed as mine when working a full-time job if you have a bit of money to spare. However, I think you'd actually have to love the subject. It can't feel like I'm working full-time and then I'm working in my free time. I also don't know if it's actually worth the risk. For me, it doesn't really feel like a massive risk most days that I'm making this, but I do generally have free time and like the free time I have is flexible. I'm not sure I'd want to do it around a 9 to 5. Important point is, do you know how to use social media? Do you have the time to grow it and learn? If not, how do you plan on showing a course to the world? For me, I love the challenge of social media, but I also get quite easily tired of platforms. If you struggle to get followers and don't have the time to commit, it might not be worth the stress. I have to pay website fees, course fees, and Google Workspace fees, which is more than I was expecting. Most of my income comes from tutoring, which is between £20 to £30 an hour. However, I go through phases of having more and less students, and I don't get holiday or sick pay. One of the reasons I'm quite confident in my course is you don't find something as structured as this on YouTube. That's one box ticked off. People won't get this for free somewhere else. If you're making a course for something that can easily be found on the internet, why should people pay for your course? When I was younger, I wanted to be an animator. I hurt my wrist a few years ago working at a restaurant and it never fully recovered. I also did work experience at an animation studio and I actually found it a bit too quiet and boring. I struggled to sit there staring at the screen all day. However, because of my childhood dreams, I'm now pretty good at drawing. Very few Japanese courses properly utilize anime as a learning tool, but a large percentage of Japanese learners are in it for the anime. Mine is still in its design phase, but currently 5 characters with storylines are planned out and will be rolling out once the lesson content is uploaded. So I'm able to do most things I require from my website myself. Okay, course making confessions. I convinced myself it would be easier because so many people want to learn Japanese and there's very few comprehensive, well-structured online courses, but honestly, I'm lucky to get a few sign-ups per month. I get worried that so many influencer courses have put a sour taste in people's mouths about online courses. I sometimes feel like my art isn't good enough to be on the website. It usually takes me ages to make a page, and sometimes I go back and I find a mistake that I didn't notice the first time because I'd spent hours staring at the page. It's not too bad, usually they're tiny mistakes, but it's still something that upsets me. Right now, after 2 years of work, the website earns enough to self-sustain, but it doesn't earn me anything on top of that. I still work on it daily, not because of what it is now, but because of what I want it to be. I sometimes get a bit jealous of people who work a normal 9 to 5, putting in the hours and getting paid for them. I sometimes work 40 plus hours on my website in a week, and the only wages I make are from the tutoring side. I often get sad when I think about how large companies can hire artists and help, and I'm here doing it all on my own. And if I ever get to a point where the website earns enough, I really want to hire someone to help me with the art, someone to help me with the code, and someone to proofread. I have a lot of days where I can't concentrate on what I'm doing because my brain just doesn't want to look at the course, and I feel bad that I've done nothing all day. I have other days where I'm so excited to work on it and I have so many ideas, but just not enough time. I have never been able to keep to any of the schedules I set myself for making the course. My workflow has zero structure, and whenever I try to structure it, I just can't. Whenever someone signs up to the site, I get happy, but I also get a bit worried that it's not good enough. I often have way too many ideas for the website, and it's not practical for one person alone. The course is currently 34 lessons of beginner's Japanese, introducing 14 words, 1 to 3 grammar points, and 3 relevant kanji per lesson. There is currently 97 lessons planned out, and 12 of them are almost ready. This is after years of work. I genuinely enjoy working on this, and if it turns out well, I don't think it's a stretch to call it my dream job. But even if it doesn't, making the course will improve my current job and workflow of tutoring Japanese, eventually. It's hard not to think about whether I'd have a more stable source of income if I'd just gotten a regular job. Would it be more or less stressful? But I wouldn't be able to go and study in South Korea on a whim twice if I were working a normal job. I hope me sharing my experience of creating my own online course has given you a bit of insight into the process and what to prepare for if you want to make your own. For those following my adventures, I hope it's given you a bit of insight into the reasons why I'm making this Japanese website. Thank you very much for watching, and if you like this and would like to follow my journey, please consider liking and subscribing.